Just trust me for one weekend. My girlfriend said those words while standing in my kitchen on a Wednesday night. I looked at her. Then I nodded. Okay. 7 weeks later, she was sitting in her sister's living room, asking why I wouldn't return her calls. The truth? Because that weekend didn't destroy our relationship. It exposed it. My name is Jake. I'm 32 years old. I work in commercial insurance. Nothing exciting, nothing glamorous, but it pays well. I own a small townhouse, have a decent savings account, and for most of my adult life, I've avoided drama. That was one reason I loved Emma, at least in the beginning. Emma was spontaneous, outgoing, adventurous, everything I wasn't. When we started dating, the differences felt balanced. She helped me loosen up, I helped her stay grounded. And for nearly 2 years, things worked, or at least I thought they did. Looking back now, the first warning sign wasn't the weekend. It was secrecy. Not major secrecy, small secrecy. The kind people explain away, the kind people ignore. Emma had this habit of becoming vague whenever certain topics came up. Where she was going, who she'd been with, why plans suddenly changed. Nothing huge, just enough to create questions. And every time I asked one, she acted irritated. The second warning sign came through her friend Rachel. Rachel was the kind of person who treated relationships like obstacles. Every boyfriend was controlling. Every boundary was toxic. Every compromise was oppression. At least according to her. The more time Emma spent with Rachel, the more her attitude started changing. Slowly, subtly, but noticeably. One evening we were having dinner when Emma suddenly said, "Rachel thinks couples spend too much time together." I laughed. "Rachel thinks a lot of things." Emma didn't laugh. Instead, she nodded. "She's not entirely wrong." I ignored it. That became a pattern. The third warning sign involved communication, or more accurately, the lack of it. When Emma and I first started dating, we told each other everything, not because we had rules, because we wanted to. Then gradually that changed. Plans became last minute. Schedules became unclear. Conversations became shorter. Whenever I asked simple questions, Emma acted like I was conducting an investigation. At first, I blamed stress, work, life, anything except the obvious. Then came the girls' weekend, the trip that started everything. It happened about 3 months before our relationship ended. Emma came home from brunch one Saturday afternoon and casually mentioned it. "Rachel wants to rent a lake house." "Sounds fun." "It'll just be a girls' weekend." I nodded. "No problem. People should spend time with friends. Healthy relationships allow that. At least that's what I believed. The issue wasn't the trip. The issue was everything surrounding it. The details kept changing. First it was 4 women, then 6, then maybe 8. The location changed twice. The dates changed once. Every time I asked about it, Emma seemed annoyed, which felt strange because I wasn't objecting. I was asking normal questions. One evening I finally said, "You seem irritated every time I mention the trip." Emma immediately became defensive. "So I'm not irritated." "You kind of are." She rolled her eyes. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I let it go. Again. A few weeks later, we attended a birthday party hosted by one of Emma's co-workers. Most of the evening was normal. Then I overheard something strange. Not alarming. Just strange. One of Emma's friends asked about the upcoming lake house trip. Emma responded, "I can't wait to get away from responsibilities for a few days." The comment bothered me. Not because of the trip, because apparently I had become a responsibility. Not a partner, not a boyfriend, a responsibility. Later that night I brought it up, calmly. Her response came instantly. It was a joke. There it was again, everything was a joke. Every uncomfortable comment, every disrespectful remark, every questionable statement. Eventually I stopped bringing things up, because the conversations always ended the same way, with me apologizing for asking. Then came another red flag. 3 days before the trip, I was helping Emma load groceries into her car when her phone lit up. The screen flashed briefly, just enough for me to see Rachel's name, and one message. "Did you tell him yet?" I wasn't snooping. The phone was right there. The message disappeared almost immediately. I didn't say anything, but something felt off. That night I asked, "Tell me what?" Emma looked confused. "What?" "Rachel's message." Immediately her expression changed. Not guilty. Defensive. "Why are you reading my messages?" I almost laughed, because I hadn't. The phone literally lit up in front of me, but suddenly we weren't talking about the message. We were talking about me. Again. Eventually she refused to answer, and somehow I ended up apologizing. Again. Looking back, that moment should have told me everything, but I still trusted her. Then came the night before the trip. The night everything changed. Emma was packing. I was sitting on the couch. The atmosphere felt weird, tense, like we were having two different conversations. Eventually, I asked one simple question. Why does this weekend feel like such a secret? Emma stopped packing, turned around, and stared at me. Then she said the sentence that became the title of this story. Jake, just trust me for one weekend. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke, and for the first time in our relationship, I stopped making excuses for her. The next morning, Emma left for the trip. I helped carry her bags to the car. I kissed her goodbye. I told her to have fun, and I genuinely meant it. At least I thought I did. But as I watched her drive away, something felt wrong. Not because I suspected cheating. I didn't. The problem was simpler. I felt shut out. For weeks, she'd treated normal questions like accusations, normal conversations like interrogations, and somehow I was expected to pretend everything felt normal. The first day wasn't bad. Emma texted a few pictures, a lake, a fire pit, some drinks, a group selfie, nothing unusual. I responded normally. Looks fun. Enjoy. Have a great time. Short conversations, no drama, no issues. Then Saturday arrived, and things started getting strange. Around noon, I texted her, no response. A few hours passed, still nothing, not unusual, people get busy. But later that evening, I noticed something odd. Rachel posted several photos online, the lake house, the dock, the backyard, the fire pit. But Emma wasn't in any of them, not one. That didn't mean anything by itself. Still, it felt strange. Around 10 that night, Emma finally responded. Sorry, phone died. Simple enough. Except 10 minutes later, Rachel posted another video, and Emma was clearly visible in the background, holding her phone. I stared at the screen, then put my phone down. I wasn't angry, just confused. The next morning, I decided to let it go. Again, that was becoming a habit. Sunday afternoon, Emma came home. Immediately, something felt different. Not guilty, not nervous, confident, almost smug, like she won some argument I didn't know we were having. I asked how the trip was. She shrugged. Good. That was it. 2 days earlier, she wanted me to blindly trust her. Now she barely wanted to discuss the trip. A few minutes later, I asked, so what ended up happening all weekend? She looked annoyed immediately. Why? I'm just asking. We relaxed. Okay. We talked. Okay. We had fun. That was the entire conversation. 3 vague answers, no details, nothing. And somehow I felt like I was the weird one for asking. A few days later, Rachel accidentally created the next problem. I was at home scrolling through social media when I saw a group photo from the weekend. Not unusual, except there were several people in the picture I'd never heard about. Men. Not one. Not two. Several. Again. The issue wasn't that men existed. The issue was that Emma repeatedly described the trip as a girls-only weekend. I waited until she got home, then showed her the picture. Immediately her face changed. Why are you looking at Rachel's posts? There it was again. Deflection. Always deflection. I pointed at the screen. You said it was a girls' trip. It mostly was. Mostly? She crossed her arms. They stopped by for a few hours. I stared at her, because suddenly every version of the story kept changing. Girls' weekend, mostly girls' weekend. A few visitors. Every answer created more questions, and every question made her angry. That night we had our first real argument. Not loud, not dramatic, just exhausting. I kept asking simple questions. She kept acting offended. Eventually she said, "You obviously don't trust me." The statement caught me off guard, because trust wasn't actually the issue. The issue was honesty, but somehow those had become the same thing in her mind, or at least that's how she presented it. The following week, things got worse. Emma started spending even more time with Rachel. Every conversation felt defensive. Every discussion became a battle. Then came the moment that changed everything. One Friday evening, we attended a barbecue hosted by one of her co-workers. About halfway through the night, I was standing near the grill talking with a few people when someone casually mentioned the lake house. Then one of the guests laughed. That weekend got pretty wild. I frowned. What do you mean? The guy immediately looked uncomfortable. Like he'd said something he shouldn't have. Nothing. Then he walked away. That moment stayed with me, not because of what he said, because of how he reacted afterward. Later that night, I asked Emma about it, and for the first time, she became openly hostile. Why can't you let this go? I blinked. Because every answer changes. No, it doesn't. It literally does. She shook her head. You always do this. There was the blame shift, not the situation. Me, not the secrecy. Me, not the changing stories. Me. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. For nearly 2 years, I'd been trying to solve individual problems. But suddenly I realized something. The problem wasn't any single event. The problem was the pattern. Every concern became criticism. Every question became distrust. And every disagreement became my fault. And every time I backed down, the behavior got worse. That realization hit hard because it forced me to ask a difficult question. What exactly was I protecting? The relationship or simply the fear of losing it? The answer wasn't comfortable. A few days later, I attempted one final conversation, calmly, respectfully, no accusations, no assumptions, just honesty. I told Emma exactly how I felt, disconnected, dismissed, disrespected. I explained that the issue wasn't the weekend anymore. It was how she'd treated me before, during, and after it. For a moment, she seemed to listen, actually listen. Then everything changed. Rachel had apparently spent weeks convincing her that I was controlling, that I asked too many questions, that I expected too much communication. And eventually Emma repeated Rachel's favorite phrase, the phrase that ended our relationship. She looked directly at me and said, "If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together." The room went silent. 6 months earlier, I would have argued, begged, explained, defended myself. Not this time, because suddenly I understood something. She wasn't trying to solve the problem. She was trying to win. And I was tired, completely tired. So I looked at her, nodded once, and said, "Okay." The confidence disappeared from her face immediately, because for the first time since we'd started dating, I stopped chasing. When I said okay, Emma looked genuinely confused. Not hurt, not angry, confused, because that wasn't how our arguments usually ended. Normally, I'd explain myself, try to clarify, try to repair things, try to make sure she understood my side. This time, I didn't, and she could tell. For several seconds, she just stared at me, waiting. Then she finally asked, "That's it?" I nodded. "That's it. What does that mean?" "It means I heard you." The conversation ended shortly afterward, not because we'd solved anything, because there was nothing left to solve. For nearly 2 years, I'd been communicating, explaining, compromising, adjusting, and every time I did, the result was the same. My concerns became flaws, my boundaries became insecurities, my questions became problems. At some point, you stop talking because you realize the other person isn't listening. They're waiting for you to surrender. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, not because I was happy, because I was finally honest with myself. The next morning, Emma started texting me. At first, it seemed normal. Then the messages became more frequent, then more emotional. She wasn't asking about us. She was asking about me. Why was I acting different? Why was I distant? Why wasn't I trying to fix things? The irony wasn't lost on me. For months, she'd ignored my concerns. Now suddenly she wanted answers. I replied politely, but briefly. No long conversations, no emotional debates, no chasing. That was the moment everything started changing. Not for me, for her. 3 days later, Emma called unexpectedly. I feel like you're punishing me." I sat quietly for a second, then answered honestly, "I'm not." "Then why are you acting like this?" "Because I was tired, but I didn't say that. Instead, I said, I'm just respecting what you said." Silence. Then she changed the subject, because suddenly the ultimatum she had thrown at me didn't feel so powerful anymore. The following weekend brought Karma Wave 1, the immediate consequence. Emma invited me to dinner with her friends. including Rachel. A month earlier, I would have gone, smiled, pretended everything was fine. This time I declined, politely. No drama, no speech, just no. Apparently that caused problems, because for the first time Rachel's influence stopped working. The usual strategy required me to participate, argue, defend myself, react. Or instead I simply stepped back, and people started noticing. A few days later, one of Emma's co-workers reached out to me. We weren't close, but we'd met several times. During the conversation, she casually mentioned something interesting. Apparently, multiple people had questioned why Emma kept changing the story about the lake house weekend. Not because anyone thought she cheated, because the details never stayed consistent. The guest list changed, the timeline changed, the explanations changed. The more she tried to defend herself, the worse it sounded. That was the clue, the first real clue. The issue had never been what happened during the weekend. The issue was why she felt the need to hide so much about it. Then came the proof. About 2 weeks later, I ran into one of the women who had attended the trip, and completely by accident. We chatted for a few minutes, then she said something surprising. Honestly, I don't know why Emma made such a big secret out of everything. I didn't respond, so she kept talking. According to her, the weekend wasn't some wild disaster, but it wasn't what Emma had described either. Several male friends had been invited from the beginning. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. The trip wasn't girls only. It never had been. And apparently Rachel had encouraged Emma not to mention it because she thought I'd react badly. The funny part, I wouldn't have. Not if someone had simply been honest. For weeks, Emma had treated honesty like a threat, and now the truth was coming out anyway. Then came the witness, Emma's own sister, a woman named Lauren. She called me one evening, not to attack me, and not to defend Emma, just to talk. At one point she sighed and said, "You know Rachel has been poisoning her against you for months, right?" I already suspected it, but hearing someone else say it mattered. Lauren explained that Rachel constantly framed healthy relationship behavior as controlling. Communication became surveillance. Boundaries became insecurity. Accountability became manipulation. And Emma had slowly started believing it. Then Lauren said something important. "Emma thinks you'll eventually get over this." I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, because she still didn't understand. This wasn't about the weekend anymore. It was about respect, and once respect disappears, everything else follows. A week later came the confirmation. Emma asked to meet. We sat across from each other at a small coffee shop. She looked exhausted, not angry, exhausted. For nearly an hour we talked, really talked, maybe for the first time in months. Eventually she admitted the truth, not cheating, not betrayal. Something worse for a long-term relationship, dishonesty. She admitted she'd hidden details because Rachel convinced her I'd be upset. Then she'd hidden more details because she'd already hidden the first details. And eventually she was defending a story she didn't even believe anymore. One lie protecting another, one excuse protecting another, until she couldn't remember why she was hiding things in the first place. Then came the realization, the real realization for both of us. Emma looked at me and quietly asked, "When did you stop caring?" I shook my head. "I didn't stop caring." She looked confused. Then I continued, "I stopped chasing." The tears came immediately because she finally understood the difference. I still cared. I just wasn't willing to carry the relationship alone anymore. That realization hit her harder than any argument ever could. Then came Karma Wave 2, the social consequence. Over the next month, several friendships around Rachel started falling apart. People became tired of the constant drama, the constant influence, the constant encouragement of bad decisions. Even Emma started distancing herself, because once someone sees a pattern, it's hard to unsee it, especially when that pattern cost them something valuable. Then came Karma Wave 3, the emotional consequence, the hardest one. The relationship ended quietly. No screaming, no revenge. I'd no public humiliation, just acceptance. But Emma struggled afterward, not because she lost a boyfriend, because she finally had to confront her own choices. She'd spent months protecting Rachel's opinions, months dismissing my concerns, months assuming I'd always be there. And suddenly, I wasn't. For the first time, she had to sit alone with the consequences. Meanwhile, my life became surprisingly peaceful. I focused on work, started traveling again, reconnected with old friends, spent more time with family. Eventually, I accepted a promotion I'd been delaying because of wedding discussions and future plans. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just growth, real growth. About a year later, I heard Emma was doing better. Honestly, I was glad. Despite everything, I never wanted her to suffer. I wanted her to learn, the same way I had. And looking back now, that's probably the biggest lesson from this story. The relationship didn't end because of one weekend. It didn't end because of Rachel. It didn't end because of one lie. It ended because every relationship is built on small choices, small moments, small acts of respect or disrespect. And eventually those choices add up. The weekend didn't destroy what we had. It simply exposed what had already been breaking for months. The moment Emma told me to trust her wasn't the problem. The problem was that she stopped acting trustworthy while expecting trust anyway. And the moment I finally stopped chasing, that was the moment everything became clear. Not just for her, for me too.